Florida State 77, East Texas A&M 3. I'm joined by Mark Salva, football analyst for the Osceola, former player and coach at FSU, coached that 93 offensive line, was part of that coaching staff. Mark, how's it feel?
These are fun. They're fun for a lot of different reasons. I've been involved in a couple of these. The two that come to mind the most recent, it was the 93 year. We beat Clemson 51-0. And I remember we beat Tulane, I think it was that year. We scored 77. I don't know what they scored. I think they might have scored one or two. But, you know, I think what made this one a little bit unique was that they were all offensive touchdowns. There weren't any defensive touchdowns. There weren't any special teams touchdowns. These were all offensive touchdowns. And that, I think, is a little bit unique because usually these blowouts, you need help from other areas to score 11 touchdowns. You know, we scored 11 touchdowns. That's crazy, right? So, you got obviously the opponent is, a thought came to my head during the game. Is this the weakest opponent we've ever played? I'm like, I don't know. It's hard to say, comparing eras and that kind of thing. But, I know we played Duquesne a couple years ago and we didn't look this good. And more than the opponent, I think it was the manner in which the team played. And I know you want to touch on mentality and of course the context of the game and where it sits in relation to what happened last week, right? So yeah, this was a really, really good performance for a lot of different reasons, and not the least of which is, I mean, obviously the opponent was whatever, but just in the way that we went about our business.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. You come off of a big victory like Alabama, and you know that you had all summer to prepare for that. And that was, you circled that on the schedule, I'm sure, as a player. And boy, they stormed the field. It's like you just won the bowl game. And now how do you put that behind you at practice during the week and focus on East Texas A&M? Or do you? Or are the coaches saying, don't think about the opponent, let's think about us and what can we do to get better?
Yeah, I think that groundwork is laid throughout the off season. When you set your goals and you set the culture and the mentality of the team, and Mike is famous for saying, how you respond. And I know that was a big point of his to the team, was how you respond in success. We see how you respond in adversity, but how do you respond? Can you handle success, right? And that's just as big a thing, a culture indicator as anything. And I think that's it's funny. That was a learned thing for us. As we built the dynasty and led up to it, we didn't always perform like that. And I distinctly remember Wayne McDuffie, my line coach and offense coordinator during the middle 80s and late 80s, sitting telling us in preparation for a game like this that, hey, Nebraska would beat this team 70-0. Oklahoma would beat this team, 100-0. And, if you guys want to be thought of in those like that, then you have to do the same thing. You have to show that you belong, and that really resonated with me, and I know it resonated with my teammates. And so it was kind of a learned thing to do that, because, if you take any opponent lightly, no matter how big the skill disparity, you can have a sloppy game. And how many times have we played teams like this where things just kind of look sloppy? And really the thing that impressed me the most was that when the backups got in, when the second and third team guys got in the game, it wasn't sloppy at all. I mean, there weren't a lot of missed assignments, if any. that I mean, I could think of one or two. There was the one turnover, and heck, we were on our fourth quarterback. So understood it, and unfortunately, it gave up. We lost a shutout because of it. But you know what? A goal line stand by that third, fourth team defense in there was impressive. We held them to a field goal. They had first and goal. And just all over the field is just little indicators like that saying, these guys took their preparation seriously. They went out and took care of their business, did it in a very mature way, very methodical way. And so I think that's a great indicator of the culture of this team that, they're very, very focused on the task that's right in front of them and not looking forward or looking backward in this case, right? And that's the sign of good leadership all around, from the head coach down to the player leaders and to the lower classes of freshmen and sophomores, right? So that's good leadership. To me, so a lot of good indicators of guys taking care of their business, taking the preparation seriously, going out and performing on Saturday.
It was electric from the start. I think Florida State scored. I know at one point they had scored 7 straight possessions, and I'm not sure they didn't get to 10.
Yeah, they did. 10. The first time they were stopped was the turnover.
Right.
So we were at 70 at that point.
So they scored on 11 out of 12 possessions.
Correct.
At that point. That's unbelievable. I mean, that is high efficiency in offense. Now we can get into some of the particulars of some things that were extremely good and also some things I didn't think we were particularly we struggled, I thought, a little bit on the run against them in short yardage situations. At the goal line a couple of times we struggled, and we scored, we got in there, but it wasn't as easy as the score would lead you to believe. Did you have that feeling when we were in short yardage sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was a function of just keeping it simple and not really. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there's probably some reasons for it. I have to go back and look. But I don't think we necessarily got into heavy formations, offset formations. We just tried to line up around a base play, and the numbers didn't quite work out, right? And that can happen. Everybody's within 5 yards of the ball, and we don't have extra people in the game, or we're in some kind of spread deal with guy motioning away or something like that. So I think it was just as big a function of a numbers thing as it was, and I may be wrong on that. I have to go back and look, but
yeah, the second watch, when we watched the game again, what I didn't do in this game that I normally do is I count guys in the box. And I don't know if they just committed to stop the run, and we torched them deep, and maybe they were committing the safeties to the run a little bit more, but anyway, Tommy Castellanos comes out, and if there was any doubt about his arm strength, I think he gave defensive coordinators something to be concerned about.
Yeah, those are some pretty balls. He did underthrow the one to Squirrel. Squirrel had beat the double. He was over the top of the safety, and it was a little bit underthrown, but that was really the only one. The rest of them were spot on. Those ones to Deuce were spot on. So
spot on.
That's it. Yeah. And
I thought one of his slants, it was real early in the game to Deuce. I mean, he threw that into a tight window. That kid had good coverage on that play, and Tommy hit Deuce right in stride.
Yeah,
got it down to the 1 or 2 yard line.
I think it was an RPO. Yeah.
That
he hit him. So a glancer out there. So yeah. I mean, you're not going to be able to just sit on the run. Not only that, you got Danzy. You had the threat of Danzy coming around the edge, and now you got the deep threats with Squirrel and Deuce. And so, that's again Gus with his eye candy and all setting up, using the run to set up shots. I mean, the chunk plays we had, that's something we need to count up there. The number of explosives that we had was off the charts. I mean, I think just about every touchdown. I'm sitting here trying to look at the stats and the amount of touchdowns we had that were that were
30 plus yards.
Yeah, was a lot. So
In the first quarter, that was a school record for receiving yards in the first quarter. I think he had 165 yards deuce.
yeah.
And boy, they were. My wife coined a phrase: the deuce is loose.
Yeah.
He had quite a first.
Well, we had that at South Carolina when we had Deuce Staley, but that's okay. She can take credit for that. That's good. So, but yeah, I mean, look, the bottom line is this opponent didn't offer a lot of resistance, and we got to take that into account too.
Sure.
I just think we got to look at how these guys prepared and executed and took care of their business. I think that's the big story here. Because there have been times in recent times where we've played opponents like this where things did not go quite as smooth, and we might win by a big score, but I think the way this game looked and felt was again a testament to their preparation and focus for what they needed to get done. And so and in the context of the big win, like we talked about earlier, I think it is really impressive.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I sort of anticipated kind of a letdown, but not. I mean, right from the start, defense stops them on the first series. Offense comes out, drives the field. Got a couple of penalties that moved the chains for us, but got in the end zone, make it 7-0, and then first play of the next drive, they hit the big 82-yarder, and you're off to the races with a 14-point lead.
Yeah. And then defensively, I think, again, what a mismatch on the line, right? I mean, there wasn't really a chance. And, it definitely got to the point in the second quarter, I think for sure, where they just said, what was the use? They pretty much threw in the towel. But that's, again, how it looked and how it felt is a lot different than it usually has in these games, So 77 points. I don't care who you're playing. Is 11 touchdowns, 11 out of 12 is obviously high efficiency. And again, no special teams, no defensive touchdowns in this deal.
Yeah.
So
we picked up a couple of turnovers.
Yeah.
Defense, their first two interceptions of the season, and I think we might have found a punt returner.
Yeah, squirrel looked good. Now we have two. That's good. And look, I want to, while we're on the special teams, I think Weinberg looks pretty solid, doesn't he?
He sure does. He has looked very, very solid. And, for a freshman, I mean, you had Bentley in '93 that came in as a true freshman and went out there and, helped us win that national championship with an important kick against Nebraska. But, this kid doesn't look like the stage is too big for him.
No, he looks very comfortable, and that's a good sign.
Chiumeno, he didn't have to do much this week. No punts.
No punts.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So good performance all the way around.
We'll come back here in just a minute with. I want to talk about. They did get to substitute a lot in this game. I want to talk about some of the guys we got to see for the first time. But first, let me say, Osceola's got in honor of the Roll Tribe victory over Alabama. We're going to take that 31 score and make that we got a 31% discount on Osceola subscriptions. So if you're thinking about subscribing, this is a great time. And we're introducing the Osceola merch store, the Osceola shop, with just branded Osceola merch. So you'll get a $25 credit on the Osceola shop if you subscribe to the Osceola. So I hope you guys will take advantage of that as well. Mark, let's go on to let's talk about the young blood and what you talked about the freshman kicker. You talked about Danzy. I noticed that on that first series, they had one of the Desert twins was in there.
Yeah.
played early, and his brother, his twin, came in and played on the second series a good amount. So they were rotating just like he did against Alabama. Those kids got early playing time. Who all did you notice that was getting some playing?
Well, I really wanted to focus on those young offensive linemen, Andre Otto. Geez, the names are escaping me all of a sudden. Big tall guys.
Lucas.
Lucas.
Yeah.
And the other tackle. So anyways, I was really trying to focus on those guys. Hold on, let me pull up my depth chart real quick because I need to give those guys credit. Yeah. So Lucas Simmons, Rizzi obviously got in the game. He got in the game pretty early. And then Jonathan Daniels and Andre Otto. Those are the guys I really wanted to watch. Because my interest is those guys have been here a little bit. We've heard that they have a lot of tools, but we haven't seen a lot of development, right? They really hadn't progressed the previous 2 years, and so I was really curious to see how they did. And like going back to my previous comment about things didn't look sloppy, things looked there weren't a lot of missed assignments. That was really encouraging, and those guys had a lot to do with it because usually what happens is in these games when you bring in these guys, the other side says, okay, maybe we can compete with their second team guys, and so they're gonna try to up their game a little bit, maybe bring some tricky stuff, and they did. Those guys handled it really well. I mean, there was some really good blitz pickup in there, and credit the backs too. Chroma and Sawchuck, and I mean they did a good job of picking up some blitzes because they brought some heat. And I saw Daniels actually, try to square up on some guys, be a little physical. I thought Otto looked the best he's looked to me. Again, being physical, his fundamentals, his steps, the way he kept his base, offensive line stuff looked really good to me. So I'm seeing progression there. Even Daniels. I mean, his pass sets, hand placement, that kind of thing, much improved. So, again, credit to Herb Hand for finding time to, because sometimes when you start, especially when you start getting game prep week and whatnot, and you're a new coach, you're trying to learn players and you're trying to figure out what everybody can do. And, it's really easy to lose focus on some of the guys further down the depth chart and just work with your best guys in order to get them ready. And that's the temptation. I got to get these guys as good as they can be. And sometimes that may come at the expense of some of the younger guys in the development, but Herb's an old veteran and he knows what he's doing, and he's obviously spent the time and invested in some of these younger kids to help bring them along. Now they're not finished products. There's a lot of areas to improve, and again, consider the opponent too, right? They should do what they did, but the fact that they did, and again, not a lot of bust, and that's what happens in a lot of these things because when you're restricted on reps and time and practice and preparation. That's the thing that where that shows up the most is in, guys, a lot of missed assignments, looking at each other, pointing, say, I thought you had them. No, you had them, that kind of thing. There wasn't any of that. So yeah, that was really encouraging for me. So, and even in the quarterback situation, I mean, Kevin Sperry looked really good.
Really good.
He did. I was really impressed with him and his command of everything. He looked really confident. He did not have deer in the headlights, which I think we've seen that in the past too. When the second team guy comes in there, no matter who it was, there's a little bit deer in the headlights situation. None of that with him, and Brock naturally is like that anyways, and he looked good too. So they threw some dimes.
And just to be, to focus on Brock just a little bit. When he came into the game, the ball was at the 1 yard line, so he was working out of the first play. They throw the ball,
right.
Which tells me they have some trust in Brock.
Yeah. And
there were a couple of plays, inside our 20 where Brock threw balls across the middle, to completions. And that was good to see that he's missed a fair amount of August with injury, but he comes in right off the goal line. I guess it was a 99-yard drive. He led, and that's not for nothing. So other guys that flashed to me, and They got Cam Davis some reps, and that was
Yeah.
good to see Cam get some reps. Singleton had some really good carries.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
Dan.
So they busted some runs. That second group, you're right. Singleton did. He had some really nice runs, some really nice cuts, and there was some really nice blocking in there. So yeah, good call out on that one. That was definitely impressive.
And the other thing, all those running backs seem to run downhill. Even
Yeah.
Singleton,
Yeah.
he had some inside runs where he was at top speed really quickly.
Yeah. I'll tell you another one too that made my eyebrows go up was watching Amari Williams on defense.
We'll talk about that because I noticed his touchdown catch.
Yeah.
But tell us about what you saw of him on defense.
Yeah. So, later in the game, he was playing defensive end, and, he obviously not as polished, but you see the raw ability, you see the explosiveness, you see the quickness for sure. His hands, and the wiggle. He's got a little hands and wiggle with him. So I'm curious as to how much work he's actually getting there, and along with his tight end stuff, because that's tough to balance. I mean, it's one thing to be a DB and a receiver like a Travis Hunter. You run routes, you run your route tree. But the nuances of playing tight end and of playing defensive end, there's a lot of communication that goes with your teammates and responsibilities. It's defensive end is no joke, right? You're contained. You've got a lot of responsibilities and on plays away, making sure you don't get cut back on the reverse, squeezing the gaps, checking quarterback for boots and all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And of course, the nuances of playing tight end with all the motion, especially with all the eye candy implemented in our offense, that's got to be that's a lot. That's a high volume of mental gymnastics that he has to do in order to perform in both places. So I'm curious as to how much work he's getting one versus the other. Where does he? If we had some injuries on defense at that position, does that mean that now he's going to be, if he's 60-40, does that mean he goes 60-40 the other way? I mean, that kind of thing. There's something there, obviously, because he's obviously a talent, and I know he came in here as correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't he originally supposed to come in as a defensive end, but
Yes.
because of our tight end situation that he and his athletic ability that it was, and the way he performed in camp, it was like, hey, this guy needs to stay at tight end. So, and obviously he with that touchdown that he did, I mean, he's a super uber talented kid, obviously. So yeah, that raised my eyebrow. There's a lot of questions that popped through my head on that one, in terms of what that is.
One of the big questions going into this game that Bob Ferrante focused on was Pittman. With Pittman out of the game, a tight end that played H-back for us and was instrumental in that Alabama run game.
Yeah, he was great. He was good.
So, I noticed they had Douglas was at the H-back some. I don't know how much. I'm going to look at that on the second watch. But so did you notice Douglas at all in the game?
I mean, I watched him a little bit, he, especially when he was an inline tight end. I mean, look, he's a massive individual. He's a glorified offensive tackle with some ability to track a ball and catch it because he got massive hands. I don't think they threw a ball to him.
No.
And he had some on one of the touchdown passes, I can't remember. I did notice him on pass protection did a really nice job. Again, consider the opponent, but he's not the physical blocker that I think he could be based on his physical profile. That makes sense.
Right.
He's not Pat Carter, Reggie Johnson, Nick O'Leary as far as a blocker goes. I think there's, and I don't know what that's about or what that is. I don't know if he's just not, and that he's reached his potential there or he's close to it. But if not, I think there might be a lot there in terms of how he really can contribute to this team, be the inline guy that is that, next blocker, glorified tight end that can really make this running game go to the next level. Goal line presence, short yardage presence. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying I think there's more there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's. I'm a huge Biscuit fan. I love. No, offensive line coaches love blocking tight ends. I mean, it makes the possibilities infinite in terms of the running game and what you can do with that.
Right.
When they're an asset and not a liability, you've got something on the other team because those guys are few and far between.
Yeah. You can't just ignore them.
No, you're gaining strokes on the field if you got one of those. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it was a hot day here in Tallahassee. I think the heat index was supposedly close to 100, and a crowd was surprisingly into it. For this was that game where a lot of people came up for the Miami game. 75% of our season ticket holders live more than 150 miles from the stadium, and yet it was a good crowd. Again, enthusiasm is very high in Tallahassee. And do you have any closing thoughts?
No, other than it's about 60 something degrees here in Nashville. You see, I got my hoodie on. I got a little chill in the air, so that fires me up. And look, we took care of business. It was a mature business like performance. I think there's a lot that can be taken from this in terms of what this team is about going into the off week. Now, we get to heal our bodies to, take on Kent and then get ready for the Canes. And I think the schedule sets up really nice for us to the season has started about as good as it could possibly start.
Yeah,
that's the takeaway for me.
And you get another test at Virginia. We'll go on the road, and that'll be another test. Of course, every game's a test, isn't it?
Well, they lost to NC State today, 35-31, I think. So they're going to be a little sore for sure. But they scored 31 points against a team, a team that typically plays pretty good defense. So
absolutely. So that'll be a test. And you've been to Virginia, and that place at times can be the fans can get
different.
What's
it's different. It's different.
Yep. Well, what as a coach right now, what does the next 2 weeks look like? You got a bye week. How would you use that bye week?
Yeah, well, you get everybody healed. Number one, I think it helped that the play count was low for your top guys. That's good. You just you focus. You kind of look forward as a coach. You look forward a little bit, but you don't let the players know that, right? Maybe
right.
you start working on some things that you're going to need down the line. Where are we? Where do we need to close the gap on some things that we want to do? And work on those. Well, do some really good self-scouting. These are our strengths. These are our weaknesses. We're going to accentuate our strengths. We're really going to work on our weaknesses. Build depth. Maybe have some physical practices, especially with the younger guys, to help bring them along a little faster. Some controlled scrimmages maybe, and build your depth. At the same time, maintaining the intensity of preparation. And you know what? As we start producing the rat poison. Don't listen. Don't keep it even keeled, man. I heard was it B-Mac say about the perfume, right? And take that to heart for sure, because
it smells good, but it's poison if you drink it.
It's poison if you drink it. You can smell it, don't drink it. Just keep it at nose length away. Stay hungry. And I'm sure Mike is, we've all learned our lesson on that deal, and just take it, as cliche as it is, take it a day at a time, make today the best day you can make it. And, incrementally start building, keep building those days. And as the season progresses, now as a coach, you're looking down the line, you're going, okay, what are we going to need? You know, knowing what, now that we've seen Miami, now that we've seen Virginia, now that we've seen, you know, some teams on our schedule play games, start building, okay, I think this is where our matchups are going to be favorable. What do we have that fits that? And let's start making sure that's going to be really sharp with the idea of peaking when we play those teams. I remember, you know, lots of times, especially, you know, typically we played Miami towards the, you know, early middle part of the season, typically, you know, putting stuff in, like, you know, when we had work done as a true freshman, you know, we worked on that direct snap at a shotgun, you know, when we had Charlie, you know, we put that in, and we would work on it, where we never ran it until the Miami game, you know, and he almost busted the first one. I think Red Lewis caught him, snapped his heels, you know, stuff like that, you know, maybe introduce a few concepts based on what they like to do defensively to the offense, you know, introduce a couple of things that, hey, here's how we're going to handle, whenever we see the structure of defense, this is how we're going to handle it based on, you know, because you got to start getting a plan for Ruben Bain and some of those guys, right? And okay, this is how, you know, it's maybe just start introducing those concepts without even mentioning the word Miami, without even mentioning Ruben Bain, but just say, hey, you know, structurally, this is when we kind of see this, let's work on this, and maybe take 5 minutes or some pre-practice time and work on, you know, steps, technique, you know, route combinations, you know, angle, whatever, right? Things that you're going to need down the line. Start working those things. I mean, you got an open week to really introduce some of those things and maybe work on them hard. But maybe throughout, as we prep some of these other teams, you know, maybe take some pre-practice time and work on some of those things. So yeah, there's time in our schedule built in, you know, that as we play Kent, Virginia, Miami, that, you know, we had the luxury of being able to do some of that stuff. We're going back to back, you know, ball buster games.
So it's very early in the season. You've got 2 wins under your belt, 2-0. You got to play a lot of players who have put in a lot of work over the last 9 months, and they got, you know, the flowers today. They got to play. What does that do for team morale when you go out to the practice field this week, that those guys got to play?
Let me tell you something. Film session on days like this, especially when those guys get in, are a riot, right? Because everybody wants to watch them, and of course some of those guys did some things that are probably pretty silly, or, you know, just, you know, and everybody has a big time of it, and it's good natured, right? It's like, hey, look at so and so, you know, you know, I mean, those can be really a lot of fun, and it builds great camaraderie. And that's the other thing too, because I was watching the sideline. I'm sure you probably were too, right? When those other guys were in there.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was watching, and every touchdown, every block, it was all celebrated equally. At least it appeared like that from where I was, you know. And again, it speaks to the maturity and the buy-in that the whole team has for each other. I mean, like these in the NIL transfer portal era, to have it that pronounced this early, I think is really, really impressive. You know, these guys appear to like each other. These guys appear to be pretty close. And again, I'll go back to the leadership part of it. So, you know, credit to the leadership on coaching staff and the players, because that's important. That's real important. And to me, when I think back to, and it's probably the last, I'm going to mention it this year, when we go back to 2024, to me, that was the most glaring thing missing from that squad was that leadership and that camaraderie that was, you know, and of course, when we went south, it just got even worse. But it seems like we had the total opposite of that this year. And it cannot be underestimated how important that is for football, because football is a hard game for a lot of reasons, but not the least of which is you practice much more than you get to play.
Right.
You know, it's a miserable. It can be a miserable experience. It can be drudgery. If you don't like, and if you don't like each other, it's even worse. If you don't want to be in that locker room, if you don't want to be in that training room, if you don't want to be on that practice field banging each other all the time, and you don't like the guys, and you don't like the coach, whatever, it can be really, really, it can be drudgery. But if it's the other way, and you guys have big times together, you laugh and you work hard, and yeah, I mean, you still get dog cussed and you still all that stuff. There's still intensity and all that. But if it comes from a place of we're getting better, we want to get better. I accept it. I want that. I want that feedback. I want that drive. Then it's really rewarding. And when you get the result on Saturday, man, you got something.
Yeah.
And that's when big seasons happen.
Right. And morale is such a big part of this game, is it not?
Yeah, for all the reasons I just said, it is, especially with this age. You're talking 18 to 24-year-olds. These aren't pros. They get paid like pros, but they're not pros, right?
They're young.
Emotionally, they're not there.
Yeah.
And there's still so much they have to learn. It's one thing for a pro that's getting paid. They have the skill set. They're developed. They get better incrementally, right? Here, the improvements come in leaps and bounds, year over year over year, game after game. The improvements are pronounced, and so it's that way emotionally too. It's that way mentally also, and some guys are further along than others and whatnot. But morale plays such a huge part in keeping those guys engaged and keeping them on track. They're kids.
Jim Gladden, our former defensive end coach, who you played, well, he recruited you.
Yeah.
Out of Winter Park, you and Paul McGowan. But at any rate, Gladden used to say about these kind of things that at the end of the day, it's the morale of the troops that matters. If they don't want to do it, pour the coffee on the fire and call the dogs in, the hunt's over. And I think games like this where I got to play and all this stuff my coach coached me during the week came to pass. The looks that we saw with the scout team, I saw. The technique that they've, beaten into me works. I got a positive result. My parents were in the stands and, they're happy. All that stuff matters. I have my personal friends are the quarterback that got in last, the fourth string quarterback, Michael Grant. His grandfather was the first quarterback ever to play at Florida State.
Only Jerry would know that.
Yeah.
I love it.
I wasn't his teammate, but I'm old enough to. But anyway, he, Don, I knew Don. And other than the fact that Don came back from war and then was our first quarterback at Florida State, Don, after he graduated, became a very instrumental part of the Seminole Booster organization in terms of helping us develop it. Mark, he was the first founder of the varsity club when they built that box. And,
wow.
And so, for Michael to be able to get on the field and play at Florida State was, very special. I was talking to his parents as the game was winding down and they scored. First, he led a drive for a touchdown. Now he had that fumble, but he responded, came back and drove the team down the field and scored. And it means something at a different level, to be able to see success. Mm-hmm. And, he's been here 3 years. He could have transferred to another school, but, these guys are his friends and he didn't want to leave. And I think those kinds of things, that's one family, that's one individual. But all those other guys that had some success today, forget the opponent. They had some success on, in Bobby Bowden Field. That's something you can carry with you to practices the next few weeks when maybe you're not going to get in the game. But, I think it helps fill your tank a little bit to go out there and and give the effort that every player on the team has to give for the team to succeed. Am I overstating that?
No, I mean, these guys, they probably understand where they are in terms of, their opportunity to play and whatnot. They're not stupid. They can look around and know,
Right.
right? But they love it. They love this place. They want to be a part of it. And they do a lot of work in the shadows in terms of like running a scout team and doing all that kind of thing. But being part of the team and whatnot, to get a chance to go out in the field and actually do something and then have some success, that's something that'll stay with them for a long, long time. I mean, I would think it's a huge thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
And you've run
yeah,
scout teams when in your coaching career, and you worked against scout teams in your playing career, and they make a difference in your preparation for the upcoming opponent.
100%. If it filters down from your best player all the way down to the scout team guys, if they take their preparation seriously, in order to give a good picture, in order to prepare you for what you're going to see. I mean, that's important. That is
Yeah.
hugely important.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure.
Well, it's been a great day for Florida State, and it's just one step in a long journey. How we use this coming week, you said it last week, that when you have success, you can coach them harder.
That's
So
right.
I imagine this week we'll see some more growth, and we're going to have to get a lot better in order to reach the goals we all want. But today was another positive step.
Yeah, it's gone about as good as it can go to this point, for sure. But I agree with you. There's things that are going to have to get better, in order to beat some of the folks on our schedule, for sure.
Yep. Well, listen, we'll be back next week to. No, we won't. We're going to have a bye.
We have a bye week.
Yeah. So, but tune in to the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines throughout the week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we'll see you all after the Kent State game.
Awesome. Go Noles.